All right, so welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, want to welcome everyone to this Q&A. Question came up, interesting question, and that is, is there any permissibility? We've spoken about this before, but always good to repeat good things. And that is that, is there any permissibility, at all for a person, for a guy to touch a woman, or for a woman to touch a guy that they are not allowed to touch, right? So who's the person in general that a person be allowed to touch? Would be a mother, father, sister, brother, child, grandchildren, everybody else, someone of the opposite sex, right? I.e., whether it's a cousin, whether it's an aunt or aunt, depending where you're from, or distant cousins, brother-in-laws, sister-in-laws, or whoever. So it's forbidden. Forbidden to touch them. Now, in general, if we'll say that if it's there are leniencies, right? I just point out there are leniencies, but in general, even blood relatives be forbidden to touch, right? If someone of the opposite sex, again, cousins, aunts, uncles, doesn't matter, doesn't matter how old they are. They can be 90 years old. They can say, "What? Think something's going to happen? This, that," right? It doesn't matter. Even a brother or sister, right? There are rabbinical authorities would say, yeah, really, you could touch them. Really, technically, you can even give them a hug, but many rabbinical authorities say then that's probably a good idea not to. Right? It doesn't mean it's forbidden per se, right? A person can. I'm not saying, not saying across the board, that would be forbidden. So the question becomes, first of all, get into some leniencies or why some leniencies may apply. But in general, what's behind the whole thing? The whole, what's behind it is the fact that you don't want to be intimate with someone else, so you're not allowed to, right? Someone that's a forbidden relationship. In-laws, same thing. You'll say, what could happen? Right? Things could happen. In-laws, brother-in-laws, sister-in-laws, right? If a person's not careful. So you gotta say, how common is it? I don't know, right? It doesn't matter. The idea is, it's not something you want to put yourself, in such a situation. Now, I'll bring a proof from Oprah. I don't know if it's a good proof or not. I remember many years ago, she had a show where she had two women and a guy. Women were a mother and a daughter. This guy was married to the daughter, and he divorced the daughter and married the mother, or I don't know, married the mother, lived with the mother, whatever the case was. So she interviewed all three of them. Now, someone gonna say, well, that's not really a normal case, right? That's really a strange case. You're right. I would agree. It happens. I'm sure it happens. Right? Even if it's very slim. Brother-in-laws and sister-in-laws, things happen? Things can happen. Right? Things can happen for sure if you're not careful. Now, in general, you don't want to put yourself in any of these situations. Right? And again, the rabbis tell us that they don't make any distinction how old the person is. Right? They don't make any distinction. The person can be a dried up prune, be 95 years old. Yeah. What are you gonna do? You can't hug them. Right? Now, if it's gonna be in such a way, let's say even a handshake, not even a hug, right? We'll make it easy. A handshake, right? And this, I'm sure, will come up anyone in the workforce, right? It'll come up, you meet somebody new, whatever. Oh, a pleasure to meet you. Okay, you might not hug them, right? You're probably not going to hug them. You'll stick out your hand, or they'll stick out their hand. That's what people do. If you lived in Japan, it'd be easier. They don't have to do that, they bow. Right? So that'd be easier. That'd be easy. You don't have to get into that. But someone sticks out your hand. Now, some will say, if someone sticks out their hand, you don't want to embarrass them. Right? You come to a worse prohibition. That's true. Right? They might be embarrassed. Now, the reality behind the situation is, even if that would be true, first of all, you're not causing it, they're doing it to themselves. Right? But let's say that this is true. You don't want to, maybe you'll say it's desecration of God's name if you don't shake their hand. And people are going to say things, right? I had someone do that to me, said it under their breath, but I heard every word. Come on, this person's very old. I cannot give them a hug, even if it's a fish hug, even if it's not something intimate, this, that, a little bit of a hug, what's the big deal? Yeah. So I heard that under their breath. It wasn't pleasant to hear, but okay, what are you going to do? So you'll say in that situation, isn't it permissible? Person might get embarrassed. I want to tell you, this is a weak argument. It's an extremely weak argument. Because the reality is, what do I care? What do I care if they're going to get embarrassed? You're going to say, what? You're not caring? Covenant of brios, honor of creation, honor of man, women. Don't you have to think of somebody else? Yes, you should. But the reality is it's something I can't do. So you got to think once, twice, 3 times before you do it. Because it shouldn't be done. Right? I'll tell you, there are some ways around it. But the fact that someone will say, and I've heard this many times. The fact is, it'll lead to something worse, i.e., they'll hate Orthodox Jews. Maybe. They'll hate Orthodox Jews anyway. I don't know if it's going to help, right? But at the end of the day, it's an extremely weak argument. To say, well, I don't want to embarrass them in public, that's worse. It's a weak argument. Because there are ways around it, potential ways around it. Person can, have their hands all over the place, like, oh, hi, how are you? I don't know, might look like an idiot, but so what? Or you put your hands behind your back, it's a pleasure to meet you. They shake out their hand, if they keep their hand out there, say, sorry, I only shake hands with ugly women. A handshaker, religious reasons. There are ways to get around it. Even if you don't come out smelling like a rose, there are ways to come around, to get around it. But to say, and again, I've heard it from a lot of people. I've heard a number of people say, but they might be embarrassed. Why is that my problem? What did I do wrong? I didn't do anything wrong. Right? Someone will say it'll come to a worse prohibition. They'll be embarrassed. Do I have to worry about that? It's a very weak argument. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to say it again. It's a very weak argument. But someone will say, we do a lot of things to make sure we don't transgress, greater transgressions. To Tosfos and Shabbos, right? At the beginning of Tractate Shabbos, right? The rabbis came along and said, don't do anything that's similar to what was done in the Mishkan. Because otherwise you come to a more severe prohibition, i.e. a Torah prohibition. Okay? Right? We want to minimize coming to worse prohibitions. True. But see, there's a problem. You can't extrapolate one thing from another and say, well, I don't want to come to a worse prohibition. I'm going to apply that over here. Who says it applies? Who says it applies? Some people say it applies. So you might say, depends who you ask. You got to be very careful. One of the things the Gemara says is that ain't doing but a milsa. You can't compare things one to another unless they tell you you can. You don't make things up as you go along. You don't come and say, well, I think this is similar, so I'm going to make the comparison. Okay, who are you? If you got the shoulders to do it, it's one thing. If you don't have the shoulders to do it, or you don't have someone big backing you, you're in trouble. I can tell you, you're in trouble. Because the prohibition, let's just make clear, of Avram Mishai Kari with the blessed memory, the Chazon Ish. Chazon Ish, greatest rabbi of the last generation, lived in Bnei Brak, built up what Bnei Brak is today. Chazon Ish said, it's Harego Yavur. To shake a woman's hands is Harego Yavur, means you have to die rather than transgress. And there are certain things like that. So, you probably say the same thing. Is it permissible to go to a mixed speech? Same thing. You have to die before you do it. Even if you don't have bad thoughts, and even it doesn't matter. This is a severe prohibition. Now, there are leniencies, right? Before I blast everyone out of the water, there are leniencies. Moshe finds in the blessed memory. Gonna go back and check this, but I'm pretty sure. He says that if it's not an intimate handshake, a fish handshake, right? Like this. Fish handshake doesn't do anything. So in that case, it would be okay. He also brings down, if you're in a crowded subway, let's say in New York, you're in a crowded subway, you brush up against someone of the opposite sex. Why? Why'd you do it? Because you were stuffed in like a sardine. Is that forbidden? It's not forbidden. Why not? Because you don't have any thoughts over it. There's no intimacy going on. You're plastered against everybody else. 1,000 people get on one train, right? It happens. 100% it happens. You don't have intention, for sure, right? So it's okay. Now, should you get into a crowded train, where that could happen? I would say no. But if you have to get to work and it's rush hour and this is the way it is, so okay. You don't have a choice. We're not saying these are good situations. This is what happened, right? Because no one's gonna say, put yourself in that situation. It happens. 100% it happens. So now the question is, what do you do? What do you do? So I've been hammered about it a number of times. Nothing to do. There's nothing to do. Yeah, but speaking of Lashon Hara, they're saying nasty things. That's not my problem. And they say, you're a fanatic, you're like the Taliban. Yeah, you don't even kiss your great cousin, this, that, whatever. I'm 92-year-old prune. So they're going to say nasty things. Do I have to worry about it? Is it on my conscience? Trust me, I go to sleep tonight. Whenever I go to sleep, that's not going to be the first thing on my mind. It's not going to be the 10th thing on my mind. It's not going to be the 250th thing on my mind. Because I'm not worrying about it. If we say something, we say the truth, it just gets into another topic. We'll come back to this topic in a second. If you say something, you stick up for the Torah. Yeah, and someone's blaspheming against the Torah. And you answer what the Torah says. And they still say worse things. Is that your problem? Did you cause them to say it? In other words, you get the transgression for blaspheming them. You're putting stumbling block in front of them, even better. Doesn't necessarily apply to a non-Jew, but let's say, for the sake of a Jew, is that forbidden? Is that putting a stumbling block in front of someone? No. But you know what they're going to say, maybe. That if you try and defend the Torah and they ask you something, you defend the Torah, they're going to make fun of it, and they're going to blaspheme, then you're going to say, you caused the blasphemy, you're putting a stumbling block. No, it doesn't put a stumbling block. I answered the question, gave a good answer, hopefully. Let's say, and they, I don't like that, and that's backwards, and you're like the Taliban. Okay, they're saying nasty things. Okay, is that my problem? Is that going to go, getting closer to Rosh Hashanah? Is that going to go on the side of transgression because someone came out and said that? No. That is not something I have to worry about. It's not nice. It's not nice what they're saying. That's for sure. But at the end of the day, I didn't do anything wrong. See, sometimes people feel guilty. I get this question a lot. People feel guilty. Someone will say something, right? 100% somebody will say something, and they'll answer back, and then they come back with 10 worse things. And then they start cursing and then say other things. Go against God, go against the Torah. But you said that. I answered what I answered. Is that on my conscience? And the answer is no. You don't have to worry about it. So, so there are leniencies. If it's going to be a fish handshake, a very quick handshake, whatever, you can't get around it otherwise. It's bad for business. there are women in the workforce, they put up barriers straight away. They tell people, listen, I'm not hugging anybody. I'm not shaking hands with someone of the opposite sex. Religious reasons, nip it in the bud. Someone's introduced, it's a new client, it's this, they'll make it known. Very nice to meet you. I'm not a shaker, religious reasons. And that's it. That's it. You got to prepare for that. And it happens all the time. Guarantee it happens all the time. Because people aren't aware. They don't know these things. Right? Non-Jews for sure don't know these. I mean, even Jews, secular Jews don't know these things. I remember when I've had a problem with her foot, with her ankle many, many years ago. So she went to see a doctor, and the doctor knew, it was a Jewish doctor, whatever, and he knew, I think it was Jewish, pretty sure it was Jewish. Anyway, that he knew that she was religious, and she's like, so the guy goes, can I touch your foot? It's like, well, are you gonna heal me? I mean, is there any other way to do it? He's like, no, I have to check it. So, okay, that's permissible, right? Going to a doctor, okay, there are issues with that also, right? Maybe we'll speak about, but in general, a doctor, let's say a guy doctor, checking out a woman, a broken arm, this, other things that's permissible. That would be permissible. Why? Because he's there to heal. He's there to help. Now there are issues, being alone in the same room, doors should be open a little bit, or people coming in and out, whatever the case is, so you're not alone, with them. But to do that, to heal, right? That's that's definitely that's definitely not an issue with it. Just gotta be careful. It's gotta be careful that that the door, either the door's open a little bit, or people, anytime someone can walk in, it's funny. When I go see the doctor, sometimes just like for an annual checkup. So usually, the door's shut. So it's a male doctor, by the way, but the door's shut, obviously, for privacy. Yeah. So there been it happened once. I'm trying to think that more than once. Definitely happened once that, like whatever, a nurse just like barged in, like barely knocked and just like barged in. So like, so if that, if a person can walk in at any time, so you definitely have less of an issue. You definitely have less of an issue. But so there are two things here. If shaking a hand is going to be this fish handshake, right? It's going to be a very weak handshake, nothing intimate about it at all. You're just shaking hands in general. Then, in that sense, it should be fine, right? Again, I'm not saying you should do it, but if a person did it, it's just like a little wimpy handshake, okay, right? That's if you did it, you did it. So there is, there is a leniency. There is a leniency for that. Whether you should rely on it or not is a different issue, right? But if you okay, so someone will say that you don't want to come to transgress a worse prohibition, and if you come to a worse prohibition, that's bad. So a person will say, I'm not saying it's right, but a person will say, I didn't want to embarrass the person, so I shook their hand. Now, this is a severe thing. Even you're going to tell me it's a fish handshake, but I didn't want to embarrass them. It's not a question of embarrassing them or not. That's not the issue. It's not the issue. It's a very weak argument. Just because they're going to be embarrassed. So what? The Torah's not true? You got to say, cover the brios. I got an obligation. Be careful here. They may, that might make a sanctification of God's name. Yeah, maybe it might. But we don't invoke certain things whenever we want. We don't do that. Oh, it might come to a worse prohibition. They're going to get embarrassed. Where do you apply it? Where in the world do you apply it? I'm not saying it can't be applied. In this case, it's a weak application. It's a weak application. Now, even if that's true, even if all this, what we said is true, who does this apply to? Applies to everybody. Now, if a person, let's say, is the public figure, is a rabbi to boot, or a rebbitzin to boot, a public figure and they do this, and even if they admit it publicly, they said, yeah, I was in this situation and this is what I did. Okay. Yeah, even if they admit it publicly, you're held to a higher standard. Person in the media was in the media a lot, whether it's athletes, entertainers, for whatever reason. I'm not even saying it's right because these people, a lot of these people not worth anything. But the fact is, they're held to a higher standard. Politicians should be held to a higher standard, right? Even though we know what politicians do. Yeah, whether it's right or wrong doesn't matter, right? The point is they're held to a higher standard. So someone who's out there as a rabbi, as a rabbinic authority, as a woman giving classes and this and that, you got to be impeccable. You got to really, you're put on a higher pedestal, whether it's right or not, doesn't matter. People are human. People can make mistakes, right? People can absolutely make mistakes. And people may have an axe to grind and, you said something, you did something, they didn't like it. And let's say you didn't do anything wrong, but it gets amplified. Why is it amplified? And I get this question a lot. I heard, a rabbi said this and he was very rude, right? And he was very rude. Okay. So I said, and? He said, but how could a rabbi do that? I said, it's human, right? There are rabbis that are rude. There are other people that are rude. I'm not going to answer for them. They have to answer, for themselves. Now, what may look rude may not actually be rude, but let's say it is. Right? I'll be generous. I'm in a generous mood today. So let's say they 100% did something wrong and they were rude when they should not have been. Does that make them look worse? Yes. Does that make Judaism look worse? Yes. Why does it make it look worse? Because they're held to a higher standard. As well, they should be. Because they're the ones giving classes. They're the ones running the show. So to speak, they're held to a higher standard. Now, does that mean they're perfect? No. Does that mean they're not, they could not be guilty, of taking advantage of people? No. There are stories. I'm not justifying what people do. Not by any stretch. And if they're unscrupulous people and they're immoral, that's a big problem. That is a big problem. Being out in the real, quote unquote, the real world, the real test. It's definitely a real test. So that being the case, they have to be that much more careful. They have to be a lot more careful. And even things that, let's say, a lot of people would rely on, who says for them they should rely on it? Right? Let's analyze that. Even, let's say for argument's sake, you got caught in this situation. Now, I understand you want to tell people why you did it, et cetera, and what was behind the rationale. I get it. Right? Makes sense. But the thing is, so either that's showing, I was in a bad situation, and this is what I did to get out of the situation. And they justify it. They justify it by saying it's going to make them look worse. It's going to make Judaism look worse. Come to a worse prohibition, i.e. embarrassing someone in public. Okay? Well, let me ask another question. Yeah. Should a person at that stature rely on that? Because if you ask a lot of Orthodox Jews, not modern Orthodox, you ask ultra-Orthodox Jews, it's like a non-starter, this question. Obviously, you can't shake a woman's hand. No, everyone's going to think, like, what's the question? What's the question? Said, okay, is it permissible to embarrass someone in public? Obviously, no. So you're in this situation, what do you do? So then you come up with advice of what to do. Either you bow, you have your hands behind your back, you have your hands flying all over the place, or I heard someone once say, you keep your hands busy around your face, right? Especially like around your nose, and like you're itching your nose, like that'll do it. They won't want to shake your hand after that. So there are other ways around it, but sometimes you're caught off guard, right? I would say probably a lot of times you're not expecting it, right? So you're caught off guard, but you have to nip it in the bud. But if it is somebody that should be held to a higher standard, and definitely Orthodox rabbis should be held to a higher standard, I think, because they're upholding the Torah. they're supposed to uphold the Torah, so to speak. Now, it doesn't mean people are perfect. It doesn't mean people don't make mistakes. But if you're going to be held to a different standard. So in this question, somebody's out there, they're an influencer, they give classes and do all these other things, good things. I'm not saying they're bad things, doing very good things. Should a person like that rely on that? That's the question, right? That would be my question. If it's other people, they're starting out, they're in business or whatever, okay. Someone told me recently that, certain places, they rely on this leniency. That if it's a fish handshake, or it's like it's not like a real hug. It's just like, I don't know. It's not a real hug over here. Then they do it. So someone asked them. Someone said, but it's really forbidden. You can't do it. He said, yeah, but most people do it. Most people in this place, they rely on that leniency. Yeah. That's what they do for they don't want to get in the problem. They don't want to have any problems, in the workplace. They don't want to lose customers that way. They don't want to look awkward. Okay. Right. They make a choice. If you're telling me they're in business, they don't want to lose clients, so to speak. Again, God runs the world. It doesn't really matter whether you do it or you don't do it. You're going to gain more clients, less clients. God's going to take care of you anyway. But, maybe that's a lack of emunah, but we're not even going to go there. First, I'm going to say, it just gets me out of problems. It gets me out of problems. It's easier. But that's not the question. The question is, are you allowed to do it or not? Say, there's a leniency. That's not the question. Are you allowed to do it or not? Answer is no. It's forbidden. Okay. If it is forbidden, then you're going to rely on this leniency. Yeah, but who says 100% you rely on the leniency? Now, if you're telling me it's people who don't learn that much, even though they are religious, they don't learn that, they don't learn that much. They keep kosher, they keep Shabbos, keep other things, but this is the problem. This is the problem. So now, if you're going to tell me, if you're going to tell me that it's they're doing it for for business or whatever, and that's what they hold and that's what they do, or that's what a lot of these people do. Okay, I don't think it's a good thing, but okay, you see where it comes from. You see what they're doing. You see who it is. If it's someone that's going to be held to a higher standard, if they're going to be held to I'm not saying these people should necessarily be held to a higher standard, right? In other words, they're Orthodox Jews. They have to do what they need to do. That's for sure, right? But they're going to, they'll have their leniency over here, and they rely on it because it's bad for business. You don't want to embarrass someone, whatever. So that's the way you go. Now, Orthodox rabbis. I'm not talking non-Orthodox, doesn't apply, because they may do it anyway. Some of them, but Orthodox rabbis, ultra-Orthodox rabbis, how can they do it? First of all, they're not going to do it as a shita. They're not going to do it like, because this is really what we believe and it's the right thing. No. Obviously, you're stuck in that situation. You're stuck. You didn't sign up for that situation, but it happened. Right? So there are ways around it. There are possible ways around it. Now, it may look bad. You may look like an idiot. So, you may look like an idiot. It's, Tamar would rather jump in a fiery furnace than embarrass Yehuda in public. Yeah, that's the idea how bad to embarrass someone in public is. Okay. But if there's a way not to do it without touching the person, again, a person has their hands all over the place. Hi, how are you? What's new? This, pleasure to meet you. Or you do like the Japanese, hands up by your side, behind your back, you bow, or whatever the case is, right? There are some ways around it, potential ways around it. or we joke about it and say, no, sorry, I don't hug ugly women, religious reasons, whatever. There are ways around it, potential ways around it. But a lot of times the person's caught off guard. And even if a person says that, their hand's still there. It can happen, right? It can happen. It's, I want to shake hands with ugly women, or, you do all these other things, but their hand is like this, right? Their hand is still like this. It looks bad, okay. It looks bad. But if a person diffuses the situation and it tries to explain the situation, they don't have to like it, right? It doesn't really matter if they like it or not. You explain the situation. I can't do it for religious reasons, and that's it. It's nothing personal, definitely nothing personal. Either the respect or they don't respect, right? But to come out and say, well, now, okay, person's in a certain situation. Okay, they're in a certain situation. So now they're going to say, well, I don't want to embarrass the person. So why didn't you get out of it? Why didn't you think to get out of it? Put your hands behind your back. Say, yeah, I only shake ugly hands. Why didn't you do anything else? There are other ways around it, right? My issue is that some people will just say, well, I'm going to rely on that. Instead of trying to explain it and looking bad, maybe it looks Judaism look bad, I'm going to do that. So my question is, why? Why would someone do that? Isn't it better? Doesn't matter if you look like an idiot. Who cares if you look like an idiot? Better to look like an idiot in the eyes of man than a transgressor in the eyes of God. Now again, this is a bad situation. But my issue is that every time this situation happens, that's what someone's going to do. They'll rely on this leniency. They don't want to embarrass the person in public. Very good. And they rely on that all the time, right? That's my issue. If you say it's a one-shot deal, next time around, they'll explain to the person and say, listen, this is not what we do. It's no offense, and there are religious reasons and whatever. Okay, you got stuck in a situation, that's what you did. But see, if you do it a second time, and you do it a third time, and that's how you're going to handle the situation, now I'm going to tell you, I think that's bad. I think you should handle it in a different way. A one-shot deal, okay, you have who to rely on. One-shot deal. Right? But down the line, you can't use that. You can't use that as the rationale. It looks bad. That's all I can say. It looks really bad. Because you're relying on something that you really shouldn't rely on. You have no choice. That's okay. I'm not saying it's not it doesn't have merit. It has merit. It has merit because you're in this situation. That's what you did. Okay. Next time around, should I rely on that? That's my question. And then the time after that, let's say it says it happens 100 times. You're going to rely on this 100 times? You're going to rely on a bad situation 100 times and say this is okay? And that's my answer? That's a problem. That I would take issue with, and I don't think I'm the only one. I think plenty of people would take issue with it. It's not something I should necessarily rely on if I don't have to. Right? That's my issue. If you did it, you want to say, okay, I did it. I didn't want to embarrass someone. It's going to come to a worse transgression, embarrassing in public. Fine. What about next time? Are you going to rely on the same thing or not? It's problematic. Right? The rationale, my opinion, for what it's worth, this rationale is problematic. It's a weak argument. It's a weak argument. You want to tell me you relied on it once? Okay. I'll cut you some slack. You want to tell me you relied on it a second time? Okay, I'll cut you a little bit more slack. Third time, fourth time, fifth time, it's not something you should rely on. Not something you should rely on. The severe prohibition doesn't matter if it's a fish handshake or not. It's a severe prohibition. It's just that if it's not an intimate handshake and it's a fish handshake, okay, so there's nothing intimate about it. But you should not have touched them. Okay. Okay, I understand the leniency. The question is how far it goes. Right? And what worries me is people will take this as a psak and they'll say, this is what you should do. If you're in this situation, you don't want to embarrass someone of the opposite sex. You're at work, this happens all the time. You don't want to embarrass someone of the opposite sex, right? So this is what you do. This is what you do in that situation. And I would tell you, no. Don't tell them to do that in the situation. Tell them, put your hands up, put them behind your back, bow, whatever. Explain to them, I'm sorry, I'd love to shake your hand. Religious reasons I can't. I'm an Orthodox Jew, or I'm a JIT, I'm a Jew in training. We can't touch people from the opposite sex. That's just, part of the religion. They may hate you for it. Okay, so what? Now someone will say, hey, you don't want to do that. That's crazy in God's name. It's not. Because you're defending what the Torah says. They have an issue with it. That's not your problem. Because if you would explain something to somebody and they don't like it, and then they start blaspheming and say, oh, this religion is a bunch of bunk, and it's this and it's that and it's the other thing. Okay, so is that my problem? That's my question. Is it my problem? Is it putting a stumbling block in front of somebody? No, it's not putting a stumbling block. Right? This is why you got to be very careful. Very careful, A, who you listen to, and B, even if they say, okay, you can rely on this and this and that, right? This is a problem. This is a definite problem. If it's a long-term thing, and again, I'm not saying this is what this person's saying. If it's a long-term thing, and you're going to tell people that's what you should do, that's a problem. That for sure is a problem. If you're going to say, listen, you got stuck, you couldn't get out of it, whatever, and you did it, and that's the way you did it, okay. You got stuck. What are you going to do? You got stuck. You don't want to stand up for yourself, whatever, you embarrassed, doesn't matter, right? So you say, I don't want to embarrass them, I embarrass myself, and I transgress. Okay. Or you can say, I didn't really transgress, I relied on this opinion, very good. My question is, what happens next time? What happens next time? If the person's going to say in all situations, if this is what happens, that's what you do, again, that is a problem. That is a problem. Can't tell people that. Because that's not what the halacha is. The halacha is you can't do it. And you got to explain to them why you can't do it. And if they don't like it, they don't like it. There's no way around it. There's no way around it. If it's a one-shot deal and they say next time, try and do this, try and do that, try and do the other thing, okay. If it's not a long-term solution, right? That's the point. It's not a long-term solution. If someone's going to say it's a long-term solution, there's a problem with that. Someone asks, Jewish man is not permitted to touch anything so holy as a woman besides his wife. True? Right? What about his kids? Grandkids? His mother? Right? Those are the people he can touch. That's true. Right? But you're right. For a guy, it's only, his wife he can touch. Right? He can't touch anyone else. That 100% is true. I'm just saying, there is what to be said for such a leniency. The question is, how far do you take it and how do you rely on it? When do you rely on it? Someone asks, I'd break the shadow man. Yeah. Break the habit of shaking man's hands. Yeah. Interesting. Even religious women don't shake hands with non-Jewish women. I don't know. I don't know why that's a problem. I don't know if that's a problem. I don't know if they do that. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that religious women don't shake hands with depends who. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the issue would be. They'd be allowed to. They definitely be allowed to. It wouldn't be, a woman to a woman is a non-issue. Man to a man's a non-issue. Right? That would seem to be a non-issue. Could there be women, Jewish Orthodox women won't shake hands with non-Jewish women? Maybe. I think the vast majority would. Even the ultra-Orthodox community, I don't think would have an issue with it. Should JIT or a no-I say a blessing if he's eating meat and cheese? Good question. Right? There's a good question. I remember someone once said they're eating what do you call it? Was it pork chops? They're eating pork chops, or they're eating spare ribs or something. And they said, what's the blessing? So I think that's worse. I think that's worse. Here, here, here's the problem. Why? Even though I got to thank God for what I'm eating, right? The problem is if it's not kosher, then it's like you're a hypocrite over here. Why make a blessing thanking God for the food? In essence, you're thanking God for the food, but the food isn't kosher, right? If it's a Jew, right? So yeah, if it's not kosher, you shouldn't make a blessing. But let's say a person ate something, they ate something they didn't know wasn't kosher, right? Then they should make an after blessing. Right? According to that, should make an after blessing. But let's say a person ate something that they ate something non-kosher because it was a life-threatening danger. They have an ulcer, right? They have an ulcer. They, if they don't eat, it's going to be dangerous, right? So that you could say make a blessing before and after, right? Because that's what do you call it? That's pikuach nefesh. That's like saving a life over here. Your life's in danger, right? So if your life's in danger, right? If your life's in danger, you could do that. That would definitely be that would definitely be an issue. I'm sorry, that wouldn't be an issue if you're that would normally be not be let me say better. It would normally be an issue. Normally be an issue if it's not kosher, right? But a JIT over here, you can make a blessing on it. If you're Jewish, it's one thing. If you're not Jewish, it's brought down in the Noahide laws. It is a good idea to make blessings, right? They would be allowed to make blessings, even if the food isn't kosher. Now, for them, it doesn't matter. Why? Because the food's not kosher. They don't need to eat kosher. So if they don't need to eat kosher, so what's the problem? Could they make a blessing on it? Why not? If you're a Jew, it's a different problem. If you're already a Jew, you can't do that. If you're a Jew, you can't do that. That's a problem. That's a definite problem. Someone asks, how can someone be overly righteous? Oh, King Solomon says that. King Solomon says that, just gave that over in what do you call it? Duties of the hearts. And Chovos Levavos, right? Let's see what the Chovos Levavos says. Right? What does the Chovos Levavos over here say? It says in chapter 3 in Shar Cheshbon Nefesh, within number 25, he says, Ecclesiastes. King Solomon says in Ecclesiastes, chapter 7, verses 16 and 18. He says along these lines, the wise one says the Chovos Levavos, he says, do not be over righteous. Right? Do not be over righteous, do not be too wise. Right? Don't be over wicked, don't be a fool. Why die before your time? This is what Ecclesiastes says. Best you hold on to one, not let go of the other. Right? So now, comes on the Chovos Levavos, and he explains, you don't go to extremes. Why? Why not be overly righteous? What's the extreme? The extreme is you're going to withdraw from the world. Right? You'd be like a monk. Right? You'll sit in an ashram all day. Right? You'll sit in an ashram all day going, right? You're not going to eat, you're not going to sleep, you're going to do all these other things. So that's extreme. That's extreme. And he says you go according to the middle path. Right? That's our obligation. Right? According to the Rambam. You don't go to one extreme or the other. Either in physicality or spirituality. Right? You don't go to the opposite extreme. So being overly righteous, Chovos Levavos says over there, again, in the gate of self-accounting, chapter 3, and there are 30. I think there are 30 ways to do a self-accounting. I think we're on number 20. We just finished number 25. So chapter 3, I think it's been like 104 classes, right? But we actually just went through that Wednesday morning for me, Tuesday night for everyone else. And that is that you have, you don't want to go to one extreme. In other words, you go too far. Chomer there says, what does it mean to be overly righteous? You have nothing to do with this world. You have nothing to do with this world. You like you starve yourself. You run around, outside in the freezing cold and a tank top and shorts and roll around in the snow, right? You want to be extra pious. No. He said you got to stay away from that, right? Being religious is good. Being close to God is good, right? All these things are good, but you don't want to go to an extreme. Even though someone said, oh, you're a fanatic, you're a Taliban, that's not going to an extreme. They think we're going to an extreme. We're following what God says. That's not extreme. If a person goes well beyond, they go well beyond and they do things that no one else does and, whatever, that's a problem, right? He's talking about going too far to an extreme, right? Totally separating yourself from this world, right? That's a problem. That's what he's talking about over there. What are the causes? A person wants to be close to God. And they've lived this life, this idolatrous life, and now they come to the realization about truth, an absolute truth. So they go out of their way, to make sure they're not going to transgress. But then they take on things that they're not ready for, or they do things to a point that like no one else does. And when you do that, you're going too far, right? So, there are these women, they call them the shawl women. They're women who are dressed modestly, but what do? On top of their clothing, which let's say they are modest clothing, on top of their modest clothing, they put on a shawl. Doesn't matter if it's 35 degrees Celsius, it's like 95 degrees out or whatever. They put on a shawl. Now, why do they put on a shawl? So there are some women, they call them, there are shawl women, and there are, I forget what they call them. What do they call these other women? There are some women that wear almost like Arabs do. Basically, you can barely see their face, right? Basically, their face is covered, and they're wearing like this long shawl, whatever. They look like the Taliban. They look, whatever, like, Muslims all covered up. Now, the whole point of modesty is so people won't look at you. So people will, you can't see the figure, so to speak, and whatever. So, there are modesty reasons, for dressing a certain way. Very good. But if you put on a shawl, or you wear this thing, I forget what it's called, a burqa, right? So if a woman wore a burqa, a religious Orthodox woman wore a burqa, yeah, you're causing attention to yourself. So that's forbidden. You want to be more modest? So why are they taking on? Most of the people, it's a small movement, but even the ones who are doing it are most likely, if not all of them, they're all Bali Tshuva. They're all, Jews that came back to Judaism. So they go to another extreme. So I remember once, I was by my Rebbe with my family. I was on Sukkot a number of years ago. And my oldest daughter happened to ask him about these shawl women. Like, what's the deal and whatever. It's like, no, don't worry. That's not for you. You don't have to worry about it, whatever. And then a week later, it's based in his rabbinical court, by one of the most powerful rabbinical courts in the world, made a protest against these women. God had a bunch of speakers saying how it's going too far and this and that. So it was very funny. He told my oldest daughter, like, don't worry about it. It's not for you. And then he came out and made like this whole strong thing against them, a protest against them, saying that, this isn't modest. What they're doing is provoking the tension to them, to themselves. If the whole thing is about being modest, very good. So let them be modest. But if this is bringing attention to them, that's not being modest, right? So there are people. I would say that there are people who want to draw close, and they wasted their lives and caught up in idolatry, caught up in other things. They want to do the right thing at the highest level, but they go too far. They go way too far. They're doing it. Their intention is good. I'm not gonna, Bali Tshuva are no different. It's the same thing. Someone who didn't grow up as an Orthodox Jew becomes religious. Same thing. They want to change the world, change everybody, change everyone in their family, start doing things a lot of people don't do, and whatever. Then they have to find a middle path because they go too far. Why do they go too far? Because they want to fix up everything they did wrong before. Make it up in 2 days, right? So that's you're gonna find the middle path. That's the bottom line. Someone tells me she met a very religious woman, she doesn't shake hands or touch. So now again, maybe she doesn't do it in general. That could be. But I'm saying, is anything really prohibited by a woman touching a non-Jewish woman? Even though you can get spiritual cooties and spiritual cooties, no, shouldn't be an issue. Someone else thought meat and cheese was unlawful. Yeah, that's for Jews. Kashrus laws do not apply to non-Jews. Mentioned many times, Kli Yakar says, right, in chapter 11 of the book of Leviticus, he says that doesn't affect a non-Jew in any way, because you see a lot of people, Kli Yakar says, comes to eating, non-Jews eat all kinds of things, creepy, crawly things, doesn't affect them negatively, right? So if it doesn't affect them negatively, why would they do it? He says a non-Jew is not going to do anything that doesn't make sense to them. Doesn't have benefit for them. So milk and meat doesn't apply to them. So even if it's a Jew in training, can they eat milk and meat? They can eat milk and meat. The day they go to the mikveh, right before they go to the mikveh, can they go to McDonald's? Can they go to Wendy's? Can they go to Arby's? As we say in Boston. Can they go to Arby's? They go to Arby's and go to Wendy's. Not a problem. There's no issue for them. There's no issue for them. The question was, so for them, it's not forbidden. For a Jew, it would be forbidden. Jew would be a hypocrite for making a blessing on it. Right? If a Jew's eating pork chops, God forbid, or spare ribs, or who knows what, and they make a blessing on it, that's a problem. That for sure is a problem. For a non-Jew, why would it be a problem? Even if we say non-Jews can make blessings, let's say, even if they can make blessings, it's not forbidden for a non-Jew. Definitely not forbidden for a non-Jew. It's for a Jew. That's the problem. What's worse if you can't tell if a woman's Jewish from Muslim? Yeah. I mean, you don't see too many of them. I mean, a lot of them very strange. They're just personality-wise, otherwise, they're just very strange. Yeah, it's a very strange thing. And people stare at them. Like, even ultra-Orthodox Jews stare at them. Because it's not the norm, not even close. See a woman in a burqa? Like, almost like in a burqa, and she's an Orthodox woman? Yeah, it's a problem. It's a definite problem. The whole point of the laws of modesty in general are to make sure that we, we wear what we should wear, not attract attention to the other, someone of the opposite sex. That's the whole point. That's the whole beauty. But if you're gonna wear something, even if it's gonna be super, super modest, but it's gonna attract people to look. I mean, not attract them, but they're gonna look because this looks really weird, and nobody in the Orthodox community wears burqas, or most people don't wear shawls. Women don't wear shawls. Forget in the summer. I'm not even talking about that. Even in the winter, they don't wear an extra layer. Yeah, that's taking extra attention upon a person, upon themselves. That's bad. That 100% is bad, right? And that's forbidden. That 100% is forbidden. I'll tell you what's worse. Yeah, someone here mentioned about, well, you can't tell someone's, Jewish or Muslim. I remember back in the day, I used to go, Boston Marathon, which was, right around Passover time, or before Passover, after Passover, depending. So, the Boston Marathon, there's a certain place, in Boston will know this. There's a certain place called Heartbreak Hill, right? It's like the last leg. It's like the last leg of it's like, I don't know, 17, 18 mile mark. right? So the marathon is about 26 miles. 26 miles altogether, I guess 50 kilometers or a bit more, right? Whatever it is. So they call it Heartbreak Hill. So my parents, knew somebody, were very, very close with, and so they had a house. They had a house right there. So we used to go there during, I used to go there, whatever, I used to go there in the morning. And, we'd like give out water, people running by and this and that. So one year I was there, and I think it's when I was engaged. So my wife was there. And one of the things, like my wife said, is you can't tell over here who the Jews or non-Jews are. Just by dress. Right? Either, you look like a Jew, a religious Jew, or you just melt in with everyone else. Right? So you're right. It's hard to tell between, a Muslim and a Jew if they wear that. That's true. But a lot of times you can't tell necessarily Jews are Jews by the way they dress. So to me, in that sense, is sadder. Why do I say it's sadder? Because they're no different than non-Jews. They dress like non-Jews. They do all kinds of other things like non-Jews. So, that's bad, right? That would be bad. But you're right. Not being able to tell, if they're Muslim or Jewish, that it's also bad, right? That I would agree. That I would definitely agree. Let me see here. Yeah. Are there any other questions? I will say one other thing. One other thing, that wherever we are in the world, if a person's a Jew, right, apply more to Jews than non-Jews, in many ways, and that is we're ambassadors to the world. Whether we like it or not, we're ambassadors to the world. So, if driving down the street, we're in line in the store or something, we have to be impeccable. Don't matter, person, rabbi, not a rabbi, whatever, you have to be impeccable, in your character traits. You got to be careful what you do and how you're seen. Right? For better or for worse, I'm not big into externals, even though, we judge people pretty quick how they dress, whatever. But it's about what you do, and how you act. So if a person, gets classes, they influence others, whatever. So they have to be even more impeccable, right? When they're out there. But we're ambassadors to the world. So I've heard many people say, it's a big responsibility to become a Jew. You're right, it is. However, Jews that are born Jews would think that. That's a huge responsibility to be a Jew, right? But at the same time, I would say, anytime we're out there, we got to be, we got to be so careful. We don't want to give Jews or non-Jews the ability to say anything against us. What do we want them to say? Wow, look at how this Jew acts. Thank God his father taught him Torah. Thank God his Rebbe taught him Torah. Thank God he grew up, he's a religious Jew. That's what we want. That we want to make the biggest sanctification of God's name we can. When you do the opposite, it's hard to fix. It's almost impossible to fix. Once the desecration of God's name has been done, to fix it is it's just very hard. It'd be like the New York Times libel somebody. They get fined up the gazoo and they have to make an apology. Where's the apology? Page 247. You buy Fogels to read it. Yeah, but the damage has already been done. Right? Once the damage has been done, it's very hard to fix. Impossible? I'm not going to say impossible. Very hard to fix. Very, very hard to fix. So yeah, we got to be careful. So I can understand someone will say, well, I didn't want to embarrass them, make a desecration of God's name. Okay. I can hear such a thing. The question is how far that goes. That's right. That was the question. So somebody mentions, person says they learn about why not eating things, from the seas, i.e., let's say like shrimp or whatever, and not pig, milk, and meat. My heart again eating it, or not yet converted. Okay, but that again, that's something your mind said. But the Kliyakar says doesn't affect the body by a non-Jew, right? We say there's an opinion that says Jews are what they eat, so it can have a negative effect on their soul, even though science hasn't proven it, right? So the Kliyakar says by a non-Jew that doesn't exist, because you see, non-Jews eat all kinds of things. It doesn't affect them. It doesn't affect them in a negative way. Not only that, since it doesn't affect them in a negative way, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything to them, right? So a non-Jew is not going to do something or keep something that they have no benefit from. Right? And I hear this all the time. I feel like I'm already Jewish and I don't want these things affecting me. They won't because you're not Jewish yet, right? It's a mindset. I get it. It's a mindset, right? But the Kli Yakar is telling you it doesn't affect you. It has no effect whatsoever. So he asked the question, why would a non-Jew? It doesn't affect him. Why would a non-Jew want to do it? There's no benefit. It would be like eating a placebo, swallowing a placebo. What does a placebo do in general? Nothing. But we may think, oh, it helped this, it helped that. But the reality is, it didn't do anything. It's a placebo, right? The placebo effect over here. I understand the mentality. I'm just telling you in practical terms how it works. It was how the Kli Yakar says it doesn't, it doesn't affect. It doesn't affect. Why would they do it? Where's the benefit? But I definitely do understand that. Yeah. Any other questions? Someone says they look like a nun. Yeah, it depends what they wear. Depends what they wear. But or like a penguin. Someone told me they had a daughter living in Brooklyn, in New York, and come Shabbos morning, late Shabbos morning, all these men, come out of synagogue, right? So he said it's like a whole stream of black, like a whole stream of black. Like some people say, like some people dressed up, they look, whole group of penguins, whole group of penguins coming out. So yeah, that's what made me thought of when you said like a nun. So yeah. It look like that. It's. I have seen people dressed up on Purim. Like, no, this is pretty funny. The talk is pretty funny. Yeah. Someone asked, fruit bearing trees have to wait 3 years, right? How about tomato plants? Fruit bearing tree, no? No, tomato plants. Are they considered a tree? Interesting. To some are gonna say that there's a question here. Good question. It always says fruit. Let's say let me see 1 second. 1 second here. Yeah, so basically the Mishnah Orla says fruits growing on a tree. It's talking about fruits, right? First year fruits. So it's a question about the sabra fruits, right? Depends where it's grown. 1 second. Let me just check this out. I want to say it shouldn't apply. Yeah, 1 second here. 1 second. I have to double check. I have to double check. If it's tomatoes, we don't grow on a tree, even though the blessing is very pre-adama. Could be it should apply. It should apply anyway, but I will double check that. I will double check that. Tomatoes are a vegetable. They're a vegetable, not a fruit, because the blessing is very pre-adama. Blessing is very pre-adama. I don't know. We call it a fruit. I don't think so. Oh, they are actually. I'm wrong. Right, it is actually considered a fruit. Even though the blessing, there we go. Yeah, the question is, does it apply or not? So here, yeah, it's really considered a fruit and not a vegetable. So the answer is only true tree fruit. Tomatoes, pineapples, bananas are considered fruits. They don't really grow on woody trees. Therefore, the halacha does not apply to them. Right? So orla will not apply. Right? Because it's not really real. It's, even though it's a fruit, it's not a real tree. Right? Not considered a real tree. So that's the answer. That will be the answer. That's what I would say. Someone asked, when saying blessings, should I try to say them in Hebrew or English? You say them in English, but it's better to say them in Hebrew. Definitely better to say them in Hebrew. If it's harder to say in Hebrew, then you can say them in English. But at some point, you start saying them in Hebrew. Start practicing them in Hebrew. Yeah. Any other questions? Pig is described as abomination. True. That is true, but again, for who? For Jews or for non-Jews? When the Torah is talking about it, we're talking about for Jews, not for non-Jews. That's what I would say. So that wouldn't apply. That wouldn't apply. You're right. Again, for non-Jews, it's a bad thing for them to eat pig? I don't know. I wouldn't say it's a bad thing for them to eat pig. Right? They could. For a Jew, for a Jew, that would be an issue. Not for a non-Jew. Yeah. Any other questions? Someone has a dried up matzahs. What should you do with them? If you wanted to, you could grind them up, make them in a matzah meal, right? If you ever make matzah balls, or use them like breadcrumbs, right? You could do that. If you're never going to eat them, right? If you're never going to eat them, you don't want to grind them up, So then I would say put them in a plastic bag and throw them out like bread, right? If you're definitely not going to eat them, then then you could throw it out like bread, right? But throw it out, don't just throw it in the garbage. Put it in a plastic bag. Yeah. Any other questions? Again, breadcrumbs can last a long time. You just have to, right before Passover, get rid of them, right? But you could use it for, seasoning. You could use it on chicken. You could use it on, you could use it on, matzo balls. You could use it, for a lot of things. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna stop here. I do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 5 o'clock Eastern time. Sorry, 5 o'clock Israel time, 10 o'clock Eastern time. Anyone has any questions, feel free. You can find me on Facebook, Beyond Orthodox Conversion in Judaism, or orthodoxconversion.com. Beyond Orthodox Conversion in Judaism on YouTube. There I got videos on ethics of our fathers, Q&As, Book of Leviticus, chapter 16, Torah portion of the week, controversial issues. You want to send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Again, I want to remind everyone I got, still some slots for one-on-one spiritual coaching, dealing with difficult issues, family, dealing with family, friends, livelihood, health, or group spiritual coaching, same thing, dealing with all kinds of those things as well.